Hello again, it's Summer Storytime. Now today is the second in our very special stories from the wonderful Tamar Williams. Enjoy the story.
So my second story for you today is definitely a story of the wild, of byd natur. And it's a Welsh story. A mae'r stori yma'n dechrau gyda dyn ifanc. Ac enw'r dyn ifanc yma oedd Llei. Now Llei's uncle was a very powerful wizard. Ei enw ef oedd Gwydion. But despite this, there was a curse on Llei. And the curse was this. Nid oedd Llei yn gallu priodi merch o'r byd hon, neu'r byd arall. Llei could not marry a woman from this world or from the other world. And this weighed heavy on the young man. Oedd e eisiau priodi. Pawb arall oedd e'n nabod wedi priodi, dim ond fe oedd ddim. And if he couldn't marry, he couldn't be a lord, he couldn't have his own land. That's the way things were in those days. Ond, oedd ei ewyth o'r Gwydion, oedd e'n ddewin pwerus iawn. And Gwydion decided to weave some magic. Felly dyma fe'n casglu blodau'r maes, derw, banadl ac erwain. And he laid these flowers together in a great pile, the centre of a green field. And then he began to weave magic over these flowers. Petals became skin. Birch and bark became bone. Green chlorophyll became blood. And there, where there had been a huge pile of flowers, there was now a woman. A woman made from flowers, a woman not of this world nor of the other world, but wholly made new. A dyma fe'n rhoi y ferch hon I Llei. And Llei and this woman made of flowers were married. And her name became Blodeuwedd. And now Blodeuwedd, because she had been made from flowers, she knew nothing about our world at all. Llei had to teach her everything. Sut I fod yn wraig. He had to teach her how to use a knife and fork, how to get dressed, how to be the wife of a lord. And for some time, Blodeuwedd was very confused as to what she was doing in the world of human beings, having been, as she had been, just something green that grew. And wedyn wrth I amser fy'n heibio, dyma hi'n dechrau dysgu. She began to learn the ways of our world. And as she did, she began to be very, very bored. Because being the wife of a lord meant that he was gone all the time. He was gone hunting, he was gone visiting other lords, and she'd be on her own, in the castle for hours, days on end, waiting for him to come back. And she longed to be outdoors with the sound of the birds. Can you hear the birds? The feel of the sun on her face, the smell of the grass after rain. Ond oedd ddim yn cael, achos oedd bod yn wraig yn meddwl bod yn y castell, yn aros am Llei I ddychwelyd adre. And Llei himself, Blodeuwedd, she didn't feel much for him. He didn't make her heart beat fast, the way that looking at the sun had done when she had been one of those green things that grew. Nawr un diwrnod, dyma Llei yn dod at Blodeuwedd a gweud wrthi hi, Blodeuwedd, my love, I'm going away for a week to visit my uncle. I'll be back soon. And Blodeuwedd, knowing that she was to be a good wife, all she said to Llei was, wrth gwrs, I shall see you when you come back. Felly dyma Llei yn dringo ar gefn ei ceffyl, marchogaeth I ffwrdd. And Blodeuwedd watched her husband go. She thought to herself, do I have to stay inside for a whole week waiting for him to return? Why don't I go out for a walk? There was a great forest around their castle, felly dyma fe'n athi. Athi mas I fewn i'r goedwig, and she walked the trails among the trees, and for the first time since she'd become a human being, she felt alive again. And she went down to a riverbank, and she sat by the water, and she watched it move. Ac wrth iddi hi eistedd yno, clywodd hi rhywbeth. She heard the sound of a hunting horn that broke through the air, a wedyn, mas o'r coed, dyma carw yn rhedeg. A great big stag with great big horns came running across the river to the other side. And following the stag came a whole pack of hunting hounds, and following the hunting hounds came a man running on foot. And he stopped short when he saw Blodeuwedd, and their eyes met. Cyn syth iddyn nhw edrych ar ei gilydd, dyma nhw'n teimlo calonnau nhw'n mynd, bwbwm, bwbwm. Blodeuwedd felt something she'd never felt when she looked at her husband Llei. It was like she was looking at the sun. And this man When he looked at Blodeuwedd, he felt the same thing. And Blodeuwedd, not knowing that it was wrong, she opened her mouth and she said the words, "Dwi'n dy garu di, I love you." Now this man, he was a neighbouring lord. His name was Wedi'i, and he knew that Blodeuwedd already had a husband. He knew that they were not supposed to love each other, but he could not help himself. And so, Blodeuwedd and Wedi'i, they spent the whole of that week together. And all Blodeuwedd would say to Wedi'i is, "Why can't I love you? I never chose to marry Lle. I was made for him. His uncle Gwydion, the magician, formed me out of flowers for him. Why can't I love you instead?" Wedi'i said, "That's not how things work in the human world. You agreed to marry him, and so you have to stay with him." And Blodeuwedd soon realised that the only way that she could be with Wedi'i would be if she got rid of her husband Lle. Ar ôl wythnos, dychwelodd Lle. And when Lle came back to his castle, there was his wife waiting for him. And her eyes were full of tears and her face was very, very red. And she ran to him and she said, "Oh, fy nghariad, it's so good to see you. I had a terrible dream about you. I dreamed that you died." Lle had never seen Blodeuwedd like this before. And he got down from his horse and he held her in his arms and he said, "Fy nghariad, don't worry. I cannot be killed except in the most unlikely of circumstances. My uncle Gwydion the magician has placed a charm upon me that means that I am very, very safe, so don't worry." Well, Blodeuwedd heard these words and of course she did worry. And she started to plot and she started to plan because all of the things that Lle had taught her, how to dress, how to use a knife and fork, how to be the wife of a lord, he'd forgotten to teach her how to think. But she had worked that out all on her own. Felly, ar ôl cwpl o ddiwrnodau, aeth hi nôl I Lle. And once again she said to her husband, "Fy nghariad, I had that terrible dream again. I dreamt that you died again. Please, can you tell me, under what circumstances can you be killed so I can make sure they never happen?" Lle laughed. He said, "Paid â phoeni fy nghariad. The spell upon me that my uncle has placed upon me means that I cannot be killed, riding or walking, at night or during the day, indoors or outdoors, and the weapon that kills me has to have been made over the course of a whole entire year, working on it only on a Sunday." So as you can see, my love, it's very unlikely that those situations would ever come together. There's no way that I can be killed. Clywodd Blodeuwedd hwn. Dyma hi'n dechrau cynllunio. And over the course of the next entire year, when she should have been in church on a Sunday, she was making a weapon to kill her husband Lle. And at the end of a year, she came to him again and she said to him, "Fy nghariad, I had that same dream that I had about you a year ago. And I was wondering, maybe we could set up that strange situation under which you can be killed so I can see how unlikely it is and I will never worry about it again." Now, Lle loved his wife so much and all he wanted was to make her happy. So he agreed. Y diwrnod nesaf, Lle and Blodeuwedd went down to the riverbank in the forest. And there was the strangest little setup. A little low wooden roof, and underneath the wooden roof a bath of water, and next to the bath of water, a goat tied up. A dyna lle nath Lle sefyll. Lle stood with one foot on the back of the goat and one foot on the basin of water. He wasn't walking, he wasn't riding. He stood with half of his body under the low wooden roof and half of it out. He wasn't inside, he wasn't outside. And as the sun sank, and it was not day and it was not night, but it was somewhere in between, Lle said to Blodeuwedd, "Dyma sut gallwn ni gael fy lladd. This is how I could be killed if you had a weapon that had only been made on a Sunday for a whole year." And dyma fe dechrau chwerthin. He started to laugh. He felt so ridiculous, stood there with one foot on the back of the goat and one foot on the bath of water. And as Lle laughed, Wedi'i arose from hiding. And he took the spear that Blodeuwedd had been making for a whole year. Dyma fe'n taflu'r gwaelff yn drwy'r awyr, and the spear flew through the air, and it hit Lle in the side of his body. Lle fell back with a laugh dying on his lips, ond Cyn iddo fe daro'r llawr, something happened to Lle. It was transformed into a great big eagle with huge wings and claws and a beak, and he flew away with a terrible scream. And he flew all the way to his uncle Gwydion. And Gwydion the magician nursed him back to health. And cofiwch chi, I told you Gwydion is the most powerful magician. And when he's angry, he can turn night to day and back again. The ground will shake below his feet. And he came looking for Blodeuwedd. And she turned her face towards him. And she said to him, Gwydion, this is your fault. You made me. You made me the way that I am. But even as she was speaking, her face was changing. That face that had been made from flowers was now made of feathers. A roedd gyda hi cryfangau a ffug. He turned her from a woman into an owl, to Llian. He cursed her. She would never again turn her flower face towards the sun, but would only ever fly in the night. And this story ends there, but every time I hear the sound of an owl or see an owl, I think of Blodeuwedd. And in fact, just over there, just out of shot, got an old barn. And in that barn, there lives a barn owl. And every time I see it, I think, maybe that's Blodeuwedd, still flying in that time between day and night, when the worlds come closer and magic can live. Diolch am wrando. Thank you so much for listening. I think my cat enjoyed the stories, and hopefully you did as well. Hwyl fawr.